Good afternoon, and welcome to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know. I'm Luann Calvert, the Chief Marketing Officer at Virgin America and your chair for the program. And this program is being presented in partnership with Virgin America. As some of you may know, Virgin America is San Francisco's hometown airline and also the official airline of the San Francisco Giants. Woo! In fact, just last month, we gave Larry Baer and the 2014 World Championship Trophy a VIP send-off at SFO, where the two boarded one of our flights to JFK to begin the trophy tour. Don't worry, the trophy was safely nestled and buckled into its own plush white leather first-class seat, where our in-flight teammates took great care of it, and Larry too. We couldn't be more proud of our hometown team, the San Francisco Giants, scoring their third World Championship. And today, we're pleased to have with us two of the prime movers behind that victory who will also look ahead to the coming season. Bruce Bochy is the manager of the Giants and also two-time National League Manager of the Year. His 1,618 victories are the highest total by an active manager, and he ranks 18th on the all-time list. As a catcher, Bruce played with the Houston Astros, the New York Mets, and the San Diego Padres. He logged a 24-year affiliation with the Padres organization from 1983 to 2006. And as manager, guided his Padres clubs to 5 winning campaigns. Bruce leads active managers in consecutive years managed 20, and is the winningest foreign-born manager in Major League history, having moved past former Giants skipper Philippe Alou in 2008. Bruce Bochy is one of just 8 major leaguers to be born in France, where his father was stationed as a U.S. Army officer at the time. He grew up in Virginia and Florida. Larry Baer is president and CEO of the San Francisco Giants. He's a fourth-generation San Franciscan who has gained a reputation as one of professional sports' leading visionaries. Larry joined the team in 1992 as executive vice president after he and Peter McGowan led the effort to assemble a new ownership group and negotiated the sale that kept the Giants in San Francisco. Larry was named Chief Operating Officer in May 1996, team president in 2008, and CEO in 2012. As president and CEO, Larry serves as the club's control person on all Giants, Major League Baseball, and industry issues. He is responsible for the overall day-to-day functioning of the organization and serves as a key strategist and negotiator of the club's major business and baseball transactions. Under his direction, the Giants developed and constructed AT&T Park, and currently the team enjoys the longest active home sellout streak in Major League Baseball. Today, Bruce and Larry will be in conversation with Roy Eisenhart, who is the lecturer in sports law at UC Berkeley Law School, member of the Commonwealth Club's book jury, and former president of the Oakland A's. I did say former. Please welcome Bruce Bochy, Larry Baer, and Roy Eisenhart.
Well, guys, okay, here we go. You know, this is actually interesting because the first year we did this, 2010, was before a small, intimate group down on Market Street. Then 2012, it got a little bigger, right, a little more boisterous. Now look at this, you guys have another sellout. So your record is growing. But I want to say before we start how much I think everybody in the Bay Area appreciates the value and the quality of organizational skills and leadership you bring, not just to your on-field performance, but everything your organization stands for. So I want to get my editorial comment in there before we go.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Roy. Thank you.
So I'm going to start actually with Larry because it's interesting, all the glorious stuff about Larry's executive, this executive, that. Larry, I want you to tell people how you started your career in sports.
Okay, this is near and dear to Roy's heart. It was about 10 days before the opening day in 1978. I was a junior at Cal Berkeley. And go Bears. And I was working at the school radio station. And my dream, I grew up with baseball in San Francisco. Used to watch Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and Juan Marichal. My dream was to play baseball, and that was after a few at-bats in Little League. I knew that wasn't going to happen. So the next best thing in my mind was to be a broadcaster. So I was broadcasting for the student station, and about 10 days before opening day, noticed that the A's did not have a station to broadcast their games that year. Charlie Finley was the owner. So I picked up the phone, and a bit of a different era, I would say. 1978, picked up the phone, and I knew he was in the insurance business in the Chicago area, and got the phone number and called, and Charlie Finley Insurance, may I help you? And Mr. Finley, please. Just a minute. Charlie, telephone. Picks up the phone. I said, my name is Larry Baer, and I'd like to broadcast your games this year. He says, well, who are you? And I said, well, I work for KALX-FM in the Bay Area. Yeah. True statement. And he said, well, Mr. Baer, BS walks and money talks. How much are you going to pay me? It's 10 days before opening day. And I said, well, I had to come clean. I said, the regents of the University of California hold the FCC license, and we'll send you $1 in the mail, but we can't really pay you because we're a non-commercial station licensed in the University of California. He said, how old are you? I said, well, I'm 20 years old, and I've broadcast 12 Cal baseball games in my career. And he says, this could be kind of fun. You're hired. So that's how my career started. I broadcast 23 games for Charlie Finley in 1978. And then he ended up, he was talking about selling the team, and he ended up selling the team about a year later, thankfully, to the family of our interviewer, Roy Eisenhart, and the Haas family, under Roy's leadership at the A's, had an amazing run of the Oakland A's starting in 1989. It's 80 or 79?
Well, we started in 80, and we won the World Series in 89.
I'm a little foggy on that memory, but...
Yeah, it's just fact. No, actually, we had it from 80 to 95.
Yeah, a tremendous run. And talk about model ownership. The A's under the Haas family really did exemplify all that was good in sports ownership.
Thank you. Bruce, this year was probably set a new paradigm for how teams go about winning the World Series. I mean, you went through you ran through all the conventional ways in the previous years. Take us through the roller coaster ride and how you got to where you did.
Well, Roy, I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. We started in spring training. I felt really good about this club. I did, and where the pitching was, as far as our position players, we picked up Morse, and so we had a power bat out there to help us out, and as we started the season, we played as good as any team in baseball. I mean, we might have been the best team in baseball. Oakland and our club both just took off, and Oakland kept it going longer than we did. But and then it went the other way, where we were the worst team in baseball. And we had meetings. We tried everything to get on track, but really the offense left us. And but the pitching stayed consistent. So I was encouraged that we would come out of this, and it had to be sooner than later, because as we got down toward the last 2-3 weeks, we were battling to get to the postseason. That last road trip, we still felt we could catch the Dodgers. And we started in Arizona. We took 2 out of 3. And then we had to go to San Diego and then L.A. And it might have been 3 games at that time. And unfortunately, 3 or 4 games. And we said, if we can keep it close, we'll put some pressure on them and maybe take the series, if not sweep them there in L.A. Well, we ran in San Diego, which they just pummeled us. Their pitching was unbelievable. They had 3 starters that were on fire, and we got swept there. So now we're scrambling to get to the postseason. And But we ended up winning 88 games, and Milwaukee had their struggles. So, we clinched early enough to where we could rest some guys, including the big guy, Baumgartner, which was the key to our postseason. We needed him for that game in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's record was 50 and 30, whatever. It was crazy, and so we needed our horse to be fresh to go there. So he got us off to a good start, and from then on we rolled. I mean, everybody did something to contribute. We go in Washington, and I mean, we got a great effort by Hudson, Petit, in that huge 18-inning game, which helped turn that around. And then, of course, St. Louis, Baumgartner was leading the way again, and to shorten this up, I mean, we played a team that was on fire too. Kansas City had swept the Angels, which was a really good team, and then Baltimore. And but anyway, so I knew this would be a dogfight. And they went Game 7, and we had our big guy available. But I just remember after we won the thing, to shorten all this up, is the players embrace, and the coaches and I embrace whatever. Then we go out there, and Buster and I embraced, and at the same time, it was unbelievable. We pulled away, and we said, how in the hell did we do it this time? Because it was an up and down thing, but it was really a neat moment.
That's exactly the point. And do you feel, particularly now we have this wild card play-in game, that you kind of have a managing style and a team style for the season, and then kind of a recalibration when you get into these sudden death situations?
Well, I think so, because you have to. I mean, there's no tomorrow in that one game playoff. So, and I feel that way with every playoff game. You can't afford to lose any games. I know going back to the World Series, there's a lot of talk about Baumgartner pitching Game 4, but their number one was going Game 5, and so I wanted Baum going against their number one because I felt we had to win both of them. I didn't want to go in Kansas City looking at Game 6 and 7 down 3-2. I felt that we had to win both, and so we did hold them back. Could he have gone it? Yes, but you try to figure out the best way that you can get there and win every game you can. You throw everything at them. You can't do that in April or May. You'll burn the guys out, but you can do it in the postseason. Hopefully, you've done your job throughout the season to where they have enough gas to step on it when they need to.
You probably had the best DH in the National League with Baumgartner.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to hear it all spring too. Trust me. Oh yeah. He was on me. I think it was August when I'm not going to hit 9th today, am I?
Yeah.
I'm going to hit 5th or 6th, so I don't know. I'll hear it, but this young kid, he's a man-child. But he takes a lot of pride in all. I mean, he's holding runners better, fielding his position a lot better, and he's swinging the bat very well now. So that's a lot of pride in a great athlete that wants to be good at everything.
When you brought him in the 7th game, there was a bit of a tension there before things settled down. And what would you think if that ground ball panic hadn't bailed you out on that ground ball up the middle?
I mean, you look at plays that really are the turning point in games, that play was as big as any play we had throughout the postseason. At that point, if he doesn't make that play, I'm heading out to get Affeldt. I'm bringing in Lincecum.
Right.
I got to make a change first and third, and he not only got an out, but he got 2 outs. And you talk about Morse's big hit and what Baumgartner did, but that kid Joe Panik with what was that stat? It doesn't get any bigger.
One thing, Roy, that's lost in that play is that Boch actually had a role in that play. You talk about getting 2 outs. Do you remember how the second out was recorded?
No.
Second out was recorded on a umpire review because the second out at first originally was the runner was called safe at first, and Boch went out and asked for review.
Oh, so you get a bonus in there.
Hey, wait a minute.
I looked. I looked, and it's still in the mail.
I'd write it in there.
You know, actually, that review, I mean, the managers are getting, I mean, we're getting help from inside the clubhouse. Sean Dunstan, he looks at it for us. So they let us know, hey, it's worth reviewing. We actually have a sign, you know, Wotus will give me, he's our bench coach, he'll give me the thumbs up, review it, don't review it. We don't know. It's up to you. and I said, just give me that, and I'll make the call then. And I think we were 50% on those.
But you know how it works. If you call for a review and it gets overturned, so you've lost it, you're the guy who gets blamed, not Wotus. So.
Yeah, sure.
So what do you think generally of the way reviews are going in baseball now? It certainly has taken over a lot of time.
Yeah. You know, I love it. I do. You know, it's all about getting it right. And, you know, I look back at some games that we lost because of a call, and, you know, that's frustrating. And, you know, I think it's going to get better. You know, they're going to stop the managers from going out there, walking out there, and kind of stalling. Right. And because it does take away from that part of the game, the arguing. And but at the same time, I go back to, we barely get to the playoffs. And what was it, 10, Larry, where Ishikawa was called out at home plate.
Right. Yep.
Well, we ended up tied with San Diego. Well, we should have had the division done because of that call. Yeah. And you don't want a game to be lost because of a call. So I think overall it's worked well. I think we're going to improve it. From now on, I think the manager just stays in the dugout. He says, I'll challenge it. And, but they need to pick it up. What I would do, and I would be comfortable with this, don't have a crew in the clubhouse to say, let's review it. Let's put it on the manager with his eyesight and say, hey, you know, I'll review it. I think that would pick it up. So I would have no problem doing that. But I like it. I do. It has saved me a lot of money, too, because, you know, each time you're thrown out, that's $1,000 to $2,000. And now I got my wife barking at me. But,
You didn't get thrown out that much. As managers go, I can think of ones that got thrown out more.
Yeah, but, I think that, you know what, I got 5 or 6 a year. You know, that adds up. I'm about 7 or 8. I still remember asking Earl Weaver about it, you know, getting thrown out. Oh. We're talking about how much the fines were. And Earl looked at me like this and
what
said,
are you talking about?
You think I paid those
fines?
That's
what I was going to ask.
I would have never got thrown out.
We pay those fines. Thank you.
That's assumed. Getting thrown out is part of your job sometimes.
No,
right?
it is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
This is a question for you, Larry, and you, Bruce, in two different contexts. Talking about pace of play. And that has effects on the way the television broadcasts operate, and also how you, as a manager, are working the game. Larry, with you first. All this talk about speeding up the game, is that really a problem?
I think it is. I think we're in a time where we have to be, an era where we have to be relevant, Roy, to all our audiences. And the reality is the young audience wants a quick game. And that doesn't mean the game has to change. And you know, there's something beautiful about the 18-inning game that went 5.5, 6 hours. Quite frankly, people that watched that game or were at that game were riveted. It was a spectacular game. So we're not talking about games like that. We're talking about games that we're talking about the way the game is played, where the pitcher gets the ball and, you know, the backing out and the time between innings and the manager, sorry, Bruce, going to the mound, comes back to the dugout, then the catcher goes out and to the mound. There's that dead time in the game that is difficult, really, in today's media consumption patterns. So at the ownership level, it's been a big focus. And the time of game approximately now is, the average game is about 2:58. And it was several years ago in the 2:40s, and before that, going back a decade or so, 2:30 or so. And so what we need to do, we believe, is there's some ways to pick up the pace of the game that I think everybody believes can be implemented in the short term. Boch and I have talked about and taken to baseball. The notion of a pitch clock, whether the clock is actually out there or not, or kept by the umpire, where a pitcher is actually, just like a play in football where you have 30 seconds to get the play off, pitcher has 20 seconds or so to get the play off.
Yeah.
Or
Do
get
they
the pitch
enforce
off.
that, though?
What's that?
That rule's in play now,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. So what's happening? It's going to be worked in spring training, and then it's going to be implemented.
How about from the field point of view?
Well, I agree. Larry and I have talked about it at the winter meetings. Every year we have a meeting with the commissioner, all the managers. We get together and we talk about ways we can speed up the game. And there's a lot of different ways. I think we just have to enforce them. And one of them, the worst one, is what Larry touched on. There's a couple teams that are just terrible at it, where they will send their catcher out, talk to the pitcher, he'll come out, and then the pitching coach will come out. I would say that's it. Yeah. And the big thing now with infielders, and it started with shortstop in Colorado. He loves to do it. But Tulo, he loves to go to the pitcher's mound. It's kind of, it makes you look like the leader too. I know that's part of it, but he's trying. But now all the infielders are doing it.
Yeah.
And I got Rigetti going, what's he in there for? What's he telling my pitcher? I got him mad. And so, but I'd stop it. That's it, And you just, there's guy gets picked, a throw over at first base. He steps off. He gets himself all clean before we start. I mean, there's a batter for Washington. It's unbelievable how long it takes him to get from on deck to the batter's box. I'm yelling. We're all yelling. Get in there. He waits till the play's completely over. It's like, okay, the camera, it's my show.
They announce my name.
And then
That's
he
my
goes
name.
up there. So.
No, and then after the first pitch, he backs out. The Velcro in the glove, batting glove, takes it off, puts it back on, steps back in the box.
But this clock thing, I've seen it. I was managing Wichita, and they had an amateur league that did it. It's really not bad. Now, I don't think we'll ever have it, but at least I think it'll serve its purpose by, if you put it in the minor leagues, to get these guys to learn to play at a faster pace, because it's like golf. If you're a golfer and you're not used to a faster pace, they're not comfortable trying to pick it up. Right. So, it teaches them how to play, at a quicker pace.
Yeah, you don't really have to take your batting gloves off after every pitch.
Right.
There are tons of audience questions here, and I'm going to quickly try to get to some of them. But one of them has to do with the shift that you start seeing employed, and where they'll play all the infielders on one side, or at least all but one on one side, and the discussion about making that not a legal tactic. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't see it happening. It's been part of baseball for I don't know how many years. I mean, they shifted on Ted Williams, so it just now is so much more pronounced. There's so much information out there on these hitters and where they hit the ball, and so we have a pretty good idea. And we're one of the major shifters now. Ronnie sets that up for the infielders, and I don't see it changing. It's up to the hitter. Learn how to play the game. Learn how to beat the shift, whether it's bunt or go the other way, instead of just sitting up there trying to bang it. I think it's going to force these hitters, to start becoming a better hitter and being able to use the whole field.
Yeah. Larry,
absolutely. It makes no sense to me why you would outlaw shifts. I mean, it's part of the game. It's sort of, the strategy of a shift is not unlike the strategy of the National League non-DH league.
Yeah.
We like that? Which is part of the game. I'll never forget growing up, Willie McCovey was the original shift, was Willie McCovey, Willie Stargell, and Pirates. And once or twice a year, if you remember this, Mac would bunt it down the third base line, often for a double. And so it's, as Boch says, I mean, you can adjust to it, you cannot adjust to it. I think it's a great part of the strategy of the game, and I see that idea not going very far.
Another question is, that I think is interesting, is how do you come off a year where you finish third or fourth or second or whatever, it's easy to figure out how you're going to get that team motivated. How do you deal with coming off a year where you have won it, and it's your third time in 5 years, and you create that sense of freshness and newness and competitiveness all over again with these guys going into the season?
Right. Well, these are things that we will talk about in spring training on the opening day talk, and as we get ready to open the season. You're never more vulnerable to complacency when you're riding a wave of success, and it can happen. And so you have to remind the guys, a target is on their back, but also, when you're in a situation like us, 3 out of 5 years, hopefully you want more. You're getting greedy and you're getting hungry, and you want to be known as a dynasty. And it's getting back to what I talked about, with the great players. They never feel like they arrive. They're always trying to improve and get better, and teams should be the same. But it's such a great group of guys with so much character in there. And now when I got 100 Pence, he'll be on them, and of course Posey's a professional, and so they make my job a lot easier because they're going to come in there and they're going to want to do it again. And they take it personal when the odds makers put us where we're at,
right.
and some of the comments, hey, we're getting the stats getting a little bit older. They look at that as a challenge. So, but these are things you have to remind them because there is a target on you when you win, and then when a team beats you, it's like they feel like, okay, we beat the World Series champ. We're there.
How much will you miss Flannery?
Well, this is a long-standing friendship. We go back to 1983, and he and I worked so well together. He pretty much knew what I was going to put on. The signs, I could be discreet about them. In fact, AT&T, I got to be honest with you, I didn't even use some signs. I just verbally yell at them. And he would always listen because occasionally I'd mix in, you stink and your music stinks. And he'd look for a fan up there, and it would be me yelling. He goes, you got me again.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to miss how professional he was, energy that he brought, his friendship, obviously, and I'm happy for him because he's, I felt when I started talking to him that he was going to step down, and he's going to be around. He'll be in spring training. He's going to be up here, so I think he's going to do some games for Comcast,
yeah.
And so he'll be around. He just needs a break. Yeah. He's an artist.
Right. So, Larry, you used a phrase before that I thought was a good one. You talked about the different delivery platforms now that the game comes through on. The days of you can go out to the ballpark and watch the game and buy a beer are long gone, and it's almost like an inversion between television, the scoreboards. You can watch them on your cell phone as pulling it out. And how do you see, if you do, the prominence of the availability of these games on so many different delivery systems changing the way fans approach the game?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's kind of a tale of two extremes in some ways, Roy, because I think that what we had, all of us had in our childhood, there's some children here, but those of us who were baseball fans as kids, I don't think that's lost. I think that there's a lot of people that want to go to a ball game, sit for 3 hours. We play a lot of day games, which is great. You look at the other professional sports, and they don't necessarily play a lot of day games. They certainly don't play a lot of day games during the summer. And it can be a wonderful escape. So you can be with a son or a daughter or a parent or a grandparent, and you can enjoy that 2.5 to 3 hours. Hopefully it's more like 240 as opposed to 250. But I'll tell you a quick story. We were building Pac Bell Park at the time. We were talking to companies about naming rights, and one was a Silicon Valley company. I won't mention its name, but it was a very big Silicon Valley company at the time. And they said, you know what, we're interested in putting our name on the ballpark, but we want to do smart seats. I said, what's a smart seat? What does that mean? Well, when you sit down, because we have so much technology out there, when you sit down, you'll be able to plug in, and you'll be able to push a button and get on your device at the time, a monitor. You'll be able to see a replay when you want. You see this and see that and see this and that. See that. We said, we don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea. We'll test it. We tested it with our fans and found that about 15 or 20% wanted it, and the other 80% said, hey, we go to the ballpark to get away from all of that.
Right. Yeah.
So there's that element. But then on the other hand, people are busy, and people want to keep up with baseball and their team. And baseball is the most tribal of all the sports in a good way. And fans are very tied into their team. It's an everyday sport. It's 7 months. And so the great thing about baseball is there's a lot of games, and it's information rich. And when people are busy, to be able to connect in and find exactly what's happening, how it's happened, and to find out if you're at work or whatever is great. And I'll tell you what, just the sort of the picture that comes to my mind is a great example of that is on this trophy tour that Luann was talking about with Virgin America to New York. One of our stops was a place called Finnerty's. Anybody know what Finnerty's is? So it's become the Giants bar on 14th and 2nd Street at Greenwich Village. Maybe we should actually buy the place. We feel like we own it. And so it's where Giants fans who are from San Francisco, going to school at NYU, or even Giants fans who happen to live in New York, whose parents or grandparents might have been New York Giants fans, gather to watch games. And the great thing about it is when you talk to those folks, you hear that, you know what, I'm following the Giants. I've got the Giants on the MLB at Bat or MLB.TV, and I'm following every pitch in New York, watching the game. And it's so what I think it's done is it's broadened the appeal of the game because it's offered folks, but this digital technology has offered folks through a lot of different ways the ability to tap into your team no matter where you are on planet Earth.
Right.
And that, I think, you can't argue but say that you can't quarrel with the fact that that's a good thing.
No. It's like everything else. Baseball has to adapt to the way the world is going. But you don't want to lose the fundamental core of the game, which is people sitting there patiently. And I want to bring up a point also about, you mentioned about having kids at the ballpark. That's something you do so well, is bring those families in.
We're really proud of that. And that, to me, that's a function of several things. One is, quite frankly, and this is to Bruce and Brian Sabian's credit, we believe that it's important to have players that are accessible and feel accessible and reach out to the fans in the community. And think about the players over the past few years. They're given nicknames, animal nicknames. Pandas and baby giraffe or the freak, which is an animal, but it's a something, whatever it is. And you think about that, and because we were actually with the new commissioner on that trophy tour in New York, and they had done some research and found that the Giants exceeded all the other teams in their youth composition at the ballpark. So the percent of young people at the ballpark, and several of us were talking about why that might be the case. And I think part of it is the accessibility of the players, and that the 12-year-old and the 15-year-old and the 8-year-old and the 22-year-old can relate to those people. And whether it's Sergio Romo, who is such an engaging character, or Buster Posey, who has more of the Boy Scout attitude, or Hunter Pence, who is everywhere, all over the map. There's sort of something for everyone.
Yeah. We are taping this for radio, so I want to say to our radio audience that you're listening to Bruce Bochy and Larry Baer from the San Francisco Giants, who are here explaining how it's so simple to win 3 World Series in 5 years. They're writing a book on winning the World Series in a nutshell. So we all know the fact is Pablo went to Boston. But the question that several people are wondering about is the nature today of the economics in baseball and the way the system works. Larry and more for you maybe than for Bruce, because Bruce is just brokenhearted he's gone. But the economics of the cost of trying to keep a player versus investing in your farm system and bringing players up to fill the hole, and I guess the current economics of that free agent market.
Yeah, I think that we have a good track record.
Right.
But it's not going to be perfect, and there's no way you can get it to 100%. And the way it works is that once a player spends his first day in the major leagues, the clock starts, and you have a 6-year period where you can be retained by that team. The first couple of years you're controlled. It's a controlled salary. You can pay the player the minimum, and then after that, it's an arbitration system. And then after 6 years, the player is a free agent. And there's a lot of strategies that you engage in to try to mitigate the effects of free agency, meaning sign players in that 6-year period to buy out free agent years so you can keep them going forward. And we've done that with lots of guys. We did that with Matt Cain, did that with Hunter Pence, or actually did that with Buster Posey, and we've done that with Madison Bumgarner, thankfully. We signed through 2019, and a number of folks.
Wow.
When you get to year 6, as we did with Pablo, and you don't have him signed, you run into the potential peril of 29 other teams competing for the player's services, and it puts the player at risk.
Right.
And in the case of Hunter Pence, we were in that situation where he came upon his free agent year and he re-signed, and we've done that with a number of folks.
And Vogelsong.
Yeah. and Romo and Jake Peavy this year, and then a lot of players in previous years. But it's not going to be 100%. And there are 29. There are not that many players to go around. There are 29 other teams. So one of our strategies is to sign players that we like, before you get to the end of the line, and to buy out those free agent years. And so it's something we tried with Pablo. We had negotiations before at the beginning of last season, weren't able to conclude them. So he went off, and I think there are a lot of reasons. Again, there are differences between the National League and American League. I'm not going to speculate. Boch may have some ideas, but it's hard to be in somebody's head as to why they leave. He's going to be missed. But we feel like we can get right back to where we need to be with his replacements.
Anything to add to that?
Well, I think Larry he covered it well. For the most part, I think players do want to stay. And I'll talk about San Francisco. We haven't lost very many players, and I was worried about Pablo. I was. And it's hard to say exactly what his reasons were, because we basically offered about the same contract that Boston did. But, Boston did have a DH over there, David Ortiz, who's a huge mentor for Latin players. And so I think that played a part in it. But, it's part of the game, and, you have to understand that these players are going to have choices, and hopefully you do tie up the Bumgarners and Posies of players, and I think those are teams that seem to have the most success is when you do that.
Yeah.
The other thing is the culture that Bruce has done such a good job with in the clubhouse. If you can keep players who've played together in the minor leagues and have them go all the way through into the big club and then beyond their 6-year window, we think there's huge power in that sort of culturally, with players working together for over a decade.
Yeah. Actually, the point of the question, I think, is a compliment in a sense, that you have an organization that has been able to stay stable in a system that has the potential for so much turmoil. And a lot of clubs can't seem to handle it, and you do very well.
So much of it is the farm system, and it's a credit to Brian and his staff and Bruce and his staff. If you looked, when we took the field last year in the World Series, the entire infield was homegrown, right? Posey, Belt, Panic, Crawford, and Sandoval.
You don't see that very often.
No. In fact, it's almost you're the exception. Almost.
No, our scouting's done an unbelievable job at getting, especially the pitching. Kane, Lincecum, Bumgarner, I mean, they're your core, and those are the guys that you have for hopefully long term, and they lead you the way. Posey, having those type of players.
Yeah. Larry, people are curious about our departing commissioner. He was there quite a while, and you worked with him, of course. What do you think Bud's legacy?
I think that it's easy to sort of throw stones and say, well, this commissioner didn't do this, didn't do that, did this. But I think when you back off and you say, I go to these owners' meetings, I look around the room, and in some ways you say, this is an impossible job.
Right.
I mean, I go back to the 20 years ago when we started, 22 years ago when we started, Ted Turner, George Steinbrenner, Marge Schott, Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. So Bud was very skilled at getting important initiatives through. And it's not perfect, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but more revenue sharing, interleague play, the wild card. I mean, there are a number of pieces to baseball. Getting this company started, Major League Baseball Advanced Media, that has produced this digital product for baseball that is far superior to what the NBA has or what the NFL has. Bud gave birth to that. His administration gave birth to that. So in many ways, he did a lot to advance the game and was fairly progressive. I think everybody believes now Rob Manfred, who was his number 2, is primed to do even more and to possibly accelerate us into the 21st century in new ways. And I think he's
one thing I'd add to your list is labor stability.
Yeah.
I mean, from mid-'70s to 94, baseball was having a strike every other year, it seemed.
And you would hear owners, and so you have the extremes, and you have the continuum. On labor, you have owners that say, look, I'm not making any money. We got to change the system. Let's fight for a salary cap, and let's go out. You heard that when you were running the A's.
Yeah. Free agent compensation.
Let's take So since 1994, we've had owners that said we've got to blow up the system and get a new system, and we'll take a strike for as long as it takes.
Yeah.
Then you have owners that say, you know what, system's okay, let's do very little to change the system. And Bud had to get in the middle of that with Rob Manfred, his chief labor person, and figure out ways to improve the system without going out on strike. And I think there were a number of excellent innovations, really, in labor negotiations in the last 20 years that were a product of their work.
Yeah.
And there's a luxury tax now that has some bite. There's revenue sharing that is meaningful, and we don't have a salary cap, but we have. The teams have bands with which they can maneuver. Otherwise, they're going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah. And baseball is the only professional sport that doesn't have a salary cap. The NC2A has a salary cap also.
0.
Yeah. So, Bruce, going back to on the field, your division looks tougher this year.
Oh, it's gotten a lot tougher. It's going to be more balanced than ever. Down south, the Dodgers have made some changes down there, but they have their pitching and they're going to be, I think, still the team to beat. With they're 2 big horses there. I think you go further south to San Diego. They're the ones that have really made a lot of noise this year, and it seems like they're determined to try to get their fan base back and get back into the game, and I'm talking about get back to the playoffs. And so they have really signed some guys that are going to provide some offense for them. The guy leading the way is Kemp, but the one problem they had was they couldn't score runs, but they've had pretty good pitching. Their pitching is one of the top staffs in baseball. Now, when you go down to their park, Petco is a pitcher-friendly park, probably more so than AT&T. So, pitchers get their confidence going down there. But now, you have to deal with a better offensive team. So, Arizona, they've made some changes, so they're going to have their first baseman back. And Colorado, I'm not sure, but I think they're counting on Tulo and their guys being healthy, Gonzalez. But this is going to be a very tough division, and it's going to be more balanced than ever, I think.
Well, all you have to do is get to the wild card play-in game, and you're all set.
I don't want a wild card. That's like five years off your life doing that wild card. Man. I'm done with it. Gee, look at this grade.
I think it's 5 years the first time. Maybe it's 10 the second time.
Right.
It was off all of
No,
our
it's funny,
lives,
but I felt more pressure in that game than the seventh game of the World Series. I really did. I mean, because it's one game, and it's in Pittsburgh, but we had the right guy going, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And Crawford.
Too bad he couldn't DH also. I get about that, but I think that's a tremendous advantage to have somebody like that on the bench who you can use like that if you had to. I don't mean to start managing your team.
No. But like I said, he's in your ear, too, every inning.
Yeah.
He's got a bat there.
That can really hit. Yeah.
So he'll drive you nuts.
Oh, well.
Sometimes you have to say no to him. I'll give you an example. Off the field. There's an off-the-field thing. I don't know
How do you
if anybody
say
heard
no to him?
Well, they did say no to him once. I've heard.
It was on the phone, wasn't it?
That's right. Otherwise, the no that I heard was, I don't know if anybody heard the story of the parade.
Oh, yeah.
So we show up at the parade, and the players are being dispatched to their various vehicles. Well, because Madison won the MVP, he got his own vehicle, as he should have, and so he was asked what he preferred to ride in the parade, and there was this antique Rolls Royce, and there was this cable car that would be his own, and there was this other antique luxury car. He looked around at the various cars, and he said, "Now, how about over there? Can I ride on that?" And he was pointing to a mounted police officer who wanted to ride on the horse. And in unison, about 10 of us said, "No."
Yeah.
You fall off a horse at the parade, hurt your shoulder, we're in big trouble.
Bruce, this isn't a baseball question, but it's a character stress question. Did you feel for Pete Carroll in the last 20 seconds of that game? Because you've been there plenty of times.
Yeah, no, I did. It's a great question. And, I think every manager, head coach, they know what Pete Carroll's going through.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the worst feeling when you make a decision and it changed a game or might have lost you the game. It's the hardest thing you have to deal with in sports. And I can't tell you how many times where, I look back and at a game that we lost, and I wish I would have done this or that. Now, I'm not quite that magnitude, and thank goodness I haven't been in that situation. I'm knocking on wood. The other time I lost in the World Series, we lost 4 straight, so it wasn't to the Yankees.
Yeah.
But these teams, Green Bay, think what their head coach is going through. Seattle scored 18 points in 2 minutes. These are nightmares for a head coach, and no, without question, that's the first thing I thought about. Oh my goodness, he's got to answer this, and he's the one. I mean, the buck stops with us, and you got to answer it, and you got to face the music.
Right. Because there's a difference between making the right decision and getting the right outcome. I mean, the right decision doesn't get you the right outcome all the time.
No question. So it's so much easier to go by the book, and I'm probably lucky in the fact that I've been doing this a while and maybe have a little credibility. I mean, although Larry's over there going, "Hey, what's with that move?" But seriously, I can go with my instincts probably a little bit more than the first year I managed or first year managers. Where you're scrutinized more now than ever. I mean, there's so much information, the scouts, and you watch the MLB channel, and it's out there. So, if you don't go with the numbers, you're going to get second guessed, and you're going to get questioned. But I still think you got to go with your gut, your instincts on certain calls, and, it gets back to the adage, do it your way.
Well, how do you see your... Go on, Larry.
No, I was just saying, at the risk of embarrassing Bruce, I think we've all seen it that there's no finer manager really in recent baseball history in the postseason than Bruce. Largely
Thank you.
largely because he's not afraid to make unconventional moves to win games in the postseason. And I think about Jeremy Affeldt in the third inning in Philadelphia, and then first up in what game was it? It was game.
I was just trying to get him out of the way so he wouldn't be on the lineup card anyway. I'll get him done.
But the point is that if you look at the way Bruce manages the postseason, he's not worried about folks second guessing him. He's worried about getting the right result and doing what he believes is right. I'm sorry, Roy.
No, Ed, I'm glad you added that because it kind of leads into what I was going to ask you, and that is, how do you see yourself having changed as a manager from when you first started doing this to the way you feel about yourself now?
That's a hard question for me to answer, how I've changed. Hopefully I haven't changed too much, except for maybe learn from my mistakes, hopefully gotten a little smarter. Maybe some players could tell you how I've changed who have been with me quite a while now. I will say, because of some moves in earlier playoffs, I know I change in that way, that I don't care, about, I can't say don't care, but I don't concern with the personal feelings of a player or whatever at that point. I mean, I love Jake Peavy, and this guy I've had for years, and he was back with us. But to go in the second inning, pull him out of a World Series game, sure, I care about him, but I felt I had to do it. I felt I had to do it with Hudson, and but you know what? It's more about the player, and I've said this in so many interviews. It bears repeating. The one thing that worked for us was the unselfish way in which they played, and when these moves were made, like Romo going, he wasn't our closer. We put him in a setup role. Not once did they ever come in my office and complain. Not once did they question, what I was doing. And, it takes away from any distractions on what you're trying to accomplish, or you're losing your focus. And so those players help you not have to think about it as much because, hey, I got to do what's best for the organization, the club, everybody to win that ball game. And, it's going to affect some players at times.
Yeah. But they seem, I never see any complaints. I mean, I never, the normal stuff you hear in the press where some players going off about having been taken out and blah, blah, blah. And you never hear that out of the Giants.
Well, again, it gets back to, the character, the makeup of the ball club. And, it's a very unselfish group, and I'm sure they're ticked off. They're upset. They're competitors, That's I want them to be. I don't want them singing Zippity Doo Dah when I pull them out of the game.
Thank God he took me out.
But it's just it's the makeup, and I think that's why we've had so much success, is because these guys do set their ego aside when they go out that door, and they know hopefully any decision I make is for the good of the club, and they're behind me.
Well, that's what I would say. That's my observation. It's that they respect you. They respect your decisions. They know for the good of the club, and when you can get that element going for you, then you're successful. And I offer the syllogism: that's why you're successful. In fact, you have an interesting start to your career because we talked about labor stuff. You started managing, didn't you, when the replacement players were?
Right.
Well, tell
that was the worst start. Oh, geez.
This was 95.
I get my first job managing in 95. In 94, we had that strike, and so I got to go in spring training with replacement players. We had firemen, policemen, plumbers. And, I had played with a lot of the players, Tony Gwynn, guys like that I managed. So now I'm worried about losing credibility.
Right.
This guy, he doesn't care about the integrity of the game. He's going to manage these misfits, and so I said, you know what? And Randy Smith, thank goodness, he was the GM that gave me my first job. I said, Randy, I just can't do this. I said, you know, this is going to end, and then I got to deal with the real players, and you know, they're not going to look at me the same, and especially guys I played with. So I had Tim Flannery do it. Perfect. So I said, Tim, this is your team, and you have fun, and so I put him under the
Now we
fire.
know why he retired.
You know, Roy, one thing about I think Boch's way and the success that we've been able to enjoy. I'll never forget when we hired Bruce in 2007. And you're all in jobs, and you all, you know, have seen a new person comes in, the new boss. Bruce is the boss of the team. A lot of times they want to change everything and bring all their own new people in.
Right.
And when Bruce came in 2007, he asked for one coach, and that was Tim Flannery, to come in. And he was willing to inherit the coaches that had really gone back through Felipe Alou and Dusty Baker through, you know, a decade or so in some cases of relationship with the Giants through the minor leagues and the major leagues. So Dave Righetti stayed on as the pitching coach. Mark Gardner stayed on as the bullpen coach. Ron Wotus stayed on as the bench coach, et cetera, et cetera. And Bruce was strong enough and confident enough in his own views that he didn't feel like he needed to bring in 6 new coaches, which is often the case with a new manager. He brought in Flan and was able to work with, and in fact looked forward to working with the staff in San Francisco, and that reinforced our stability, I think, as an organization, so that we didn't have this massive change. And I think that's played a big role, is being able to have the consistency.
Yeah. And Righetti how many years has he been with you now?
Well, he pitched for us in '93. Last pitched for us in '93, the first year of our ownership group, and then became pitching coach for Dusty. I don't know what year was it. It was back.
I don't know.
Back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
What an asset.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I did not know Dave well when I came up here, but I knew him well enough, and watching him from the other side, I knew I wanted him, and getting to know him, how he works, has really been a pleasure. And I really rely on him, and we probably spend as much time together as any coach. Wotus is the bench coach. I have to spend a lot of time there, but Rags and I are all constantly talking and preparing together.
First of all, I want to thank Virgin America for their support in helping the Commonwealth to run this program. And secondly, let's do this next year and not wait till 2 years later.
Change it up.
Right. Trick it.
That's the motto.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.